Taiwan for just over 4 years now. My Chinese is still very buhao. Unfortunately. Blame Tina, because she tried to teach me Chinese for a little bit, and then she gave up on me.
I thought you were the one who gave up on me.
Yeah. So I've been here for a little bit of time, and I know you guys have obviously seen some bio stuff, so I guess I'll just kind of jump into it. And please let me know if I speak too fast, because the important thing is also understanding the English, and it's useless if you don't understand what I'm saying. So I think we just start off there. So let me start off with starting off with our story and how we got here. So in 2014, I had just graduated from McGill University in Canada, and I'm Canadian. And I obviously, like many people who graduate, they have no idea what to do after, and we feel like we can't get a job. And that was my case. I tried applying to a bunch of places, and I got denied everywhere. So I was lucky. 2 weeks after graduation, one of my former roommates, so someone I used to live with in university, he was Norwegian, and he asked me to come start a hospital with him in Ethiopia. So him and his father, both Norwegians, had been in and out of Ethiopia for many years. His father was a famous surgeon in Ethiopia, and the idea was that at the time he was running a medical charity group. So he was the one performing surgeries for a nonprofit in Ethiopia. The problem is like many charities, is you spend half your time trying to find money, and then half the other time just doing the work. And it wasn't efficient. So what we decided to do was see if there's another way that we could possibly do good without having to only rely on donations. So we decided to set up a self-sustaining hospital. And what we mean by that is we would, in Ethiopia, it's the capital of the African Union. So there's over 120 embassies and many foreigners there. The problem is there are no good healthcare services there. So if someone has a problem, they would fly out of the country either to Dubai, to Thailand, to India, just in order to see a doctor. So that was a major problem. So we saw that and said, like, okay, well, what if we started a hospital that could serve that community and then collect all the money from the wealthy international people with insurance? And then what we did is we would use all that money for two things. So we would use it, one, to provide medical charity to people who couldn't afford it, so very poor people. And then the second thing we did was we wanted to raise the level of the healthcare professionals in Ethiopia. So just to give you an example, the quality of the doctors and nurses is very, very low in Ethiopia. Like, I can't stress that enough, it's crazy. So just to give you an example, so at our hospital, when we interview nurses, we would get them on the score, we'd give them 30 questions, a little test before they come into the interview. And the average score is about 15 out of 30. And those are people who have practiced in Ethiopia as doctors and nurses for over like 5 years, 5 to 10 years. These are professionals. We had a kid come in who had done 1 year of undergraduate bachelor science, came in and got 29 out of 30. That just shows the level of knowledge that is just not there. And then on top of that, I don't know if obviously it's not an issue here in Taiwan, but there's something called the brain drain. So in Africa, and especially in Ethiopia, it's a major problem where you spend all this time getting to train doctors, and they become hopefully really good, and then they see, okay, well, if I'm a good doctor, I'm just going to go overseas. I don't want to stay here. So what ends up happening is exactly that. So you put all your resources training medical doctors in this country, and they all end up leaving. So to give you an example, the largest group of doctors, of Ethiopian doctors outside of Ethiopia, is in Washington, D.C., and they're all taxi drivers. let me repeat that. The largest group of Ethiopian doctors outside of Ethiopia are taxi drivers in Washington. That's insane. And that's just supposed to show. And like, you spend all these resources trying to build up these doctors, and they just end up leaving. So it's really sad. So that's why the quality is so low in the country. So we saw it as kind of our duty to try to raise that system. So what we decided to do is, as I mentioned, our second part was to raise the quality of healthcare professionals. So we started a bunch of master's programs to what's called critical care nursing. So you have your basic nurses, and then you have ones for the ER, emergency room, and critical care. So we decided to launch these programs, and specifically we said, okay, if you come through our program, we will pay for everything, but you have to stay in Ethiopia. And that was our deal that we made with the people. And so far, we've been running that for about 5 years now. And then just last year, we launched our first, our own school. So we started our own nursing program. So now we have about 30 kids a year coming from an undergraduate level. Because what we realized was even the people we were getting in at a master's level were not ready to get to that point. So we decided, okay, we need to go even earlier. So as soon as they come out of high school, we take them and put them through a 5-year program with us, and then we put them through a master's program. And at that point, what we do is we take some of them and put them in our hospital, and then about 80% of them, what we do is we make a deal with them ahead of time saying, look, if you're going to come through our program, we will take you from down here and bring you to a top-level international nurse, but we will put you in different regions across Ethiopia, and your job is to also train the other people. So that's the kind of deal. We call that train the trainers. So that's the kind of deal we came up with them, and so far it's been working very well. So yeah, anyways, over the course of, I guess, 2 years when I was in Ethiopia, this actually used to be a small hotel. So we lived in this small hotel, and then as we were building it, I actually used to live, this was my room right here. And then after 4 months, then I moved up here. And then after another 4 months, I moved up here. And then eventually I had to move out. And so we moved across the street. But that's just kind of a funny story. So we actually lived there while we were building it. And then, So once we got our hospital, we came across a large problem. Obviously, another problem. There's many problems. And we came across this other problem, and this was it. It was the fact that we had the best emergency hospital in the country, but no way to get people to the hospital. So in Ethiopia, there is no ambulance system. There is no number that you can call if you have a problem. So here is 119, I think, if you have an emergency. Yeah. So over there is no number that you can call. There is no one coming. So the quickest thing you can do is maybe call a friend or just throw someone in a taxi and then go to the hospital. And then we found out that there was another problem, was the fact that even if you got to call a friend or you got to even call they have private ambulances there, even if you got to call one, there was no way to describe where you are because there are no street names in the country. So imagine you're in the street, in the middle of Africa, trying to describe where you are. It's impossible. There are no street names. So we said, okay, at this point, we need to solve this problem in order to get people to our hospital. So at this point, I had gone back to Ottawa, to Canada, and I'd gone to the National Emergency Center. And I said, okay, can I take your system and bring it back to Ethiopia? That makes sense. We tried that, and it failed. It failed completely. The problem is their system was not built for a lot of the infrastructure issues that was in Africa. So infrastructure issues. So, I mean, even at the hospital, power goes out maybe every hour. So power goes out all the time, and it can stay off for a bunch of times. So we have about 5 generators at our hospital that we have to import from Dubai that keep the hospital going. And then the other thing is the network in Ethiopia, they shut off automatically whenever they feel like it, just because. So then if you want to call someone, sometimes you can't even reach anyone. And then what we had decided to do was, okay, well, maybe we just have to build this ourselves. So I called a friend of mine who I went to university university with, and his name was Chris Kine, and he was at HTC here in Taiwan. He was working on the medical side of things at HTC. He was an engineer. So I called him and I said, look, I need some help. Either we can just build a simple app that could just find your GPS coordinates. Very simple stuff. And then he said, okay, yeah, we can do it. So anyways, long story short, over the course of like 2 years, we ended up starting what was a simple app to creating an entire system, which was Ethiopia's first full circle EMS system that included everything from, everyone had an app that you could just directly click and it would ping your location to our emergency central. So we have one nurse with an operator, and they essentially have just like this. They see all the locations and anyone who would come up on our system, and they can see exactly where you are. And then we also created tablets and apps for the tablets in all the ambulances. So now the ambulances know exactly where to go, who to pick up, and they also know all their medical information ahead of time, so they're fully prepared before they get there. So this was actually Ethiopia's first full circle EMS system, and this is what it looks like. So obviously we have at the bottom, we have the ambulance drivers, we have up top as well, and then we have the operators who would take all your medical information. And the interesting thing that we did was we built a system that was able to function with what we call limited infrastructure. So we built a system that was able to adapt to all the power outages, all the network outages, all these things that we just take for granted here in Taiwan or in North America. So we ended up starting what was called Emergency Dispatch Africa, and essentially this system is something we look to bring to all the countries across sub-Saharan Africa. And what we do is, essentially we can provide what's called capability. So we provide the ability for all these different regions to start their own emergency services, because otherwise it's not possible. And obviously we don't go in there and run it ourselves. That would be not efficient. So we just provide them with the technology, the training, the resources, and then we actually provide the local people to run the system themselves, which also provides jobs and provides the actual care they need. So that's been up since 2016. So that's pretty cool. And then, so after that, we had said, okay, well, we started the first system, and we love doing stuff with technology, with healthcare. We realized the impact we can make with the use of this technology. So we decided to come to Taiwan and start what's called Kibo. And the reason we came to Taiwan is because Chris had many connections with a lot of quality engineers, designers, and the quality here in Taiwan is extremely high. So it was the best option for us at the time to come here. And since then, we've kind of expanded what we've done at Kibo. So now we're very, very focused on health analytics. So we obviously do our emergency services, as you see at the bottom, and then we also do applied data analytics, and we focus a lot on research and development. So just some of the stuff that we've done so far. So obviously, Emergency Dispatch Africa is what we started with, and then we just launched recently Lona, which is essentially it's a system to connect patients, doctors for sleep issues. So I don't know if you guys, I'll talk a bit about it. So a bit about sleep, this is the plug. So a big issue is a lot of people don't realize that sleep is a major issue when it comes to chronic disease, and it's just completely understated. So what we can actually do is actually just use simple wearables and diagnose people and screen them for actually deadly diseases that they don't know they have. And then after that, we get them on a program to kind of help them with their doctors. So that's kind of one thing that we've done. And then we have a group at Harvard Medical School. It's called the Center for Dynamical Biomarkers. That we have a team there that essentially creates all our algorithms, our health algorithms, and our AI. And then here in Taiwan, we have our product development team. So we create the entire infrastructure that we can just plug these algorithms in. And then we've also launched 2 nonprofits in the past couple of years. So one is the X Research Coalition. We did a a large project with Huawei in China, which was a nonprofit for citizen science. So what's that called is we want to empower regular people to kind of collect data for medical research. So all we did is we partnered with Huawei. So a bunch of people that had the Huawei wearables could just donate their data to this system, and they could collect data for medical research. So that's a cool thing. And then actually just last month we launched PhysioQ, which is another nonprofit that we launched in the U.S. And that one is for medical research. So a lot of times, you guys, I'm not sure if you know much about medical research, but a lot of times, if you wanted to do research as a researcher in a lab, you have to get people to come to you every day in order to take all their test scores, and it's a real pain, and it becomes really expensive to do. So what we decided to do is say, like, okay, well, we're using wearables. Everyone already has wearables right now. So why don't we just collect this data for research outside the lab? So we created this system, this platform that allows researchers to collect real-world data from a lot of the participants. And we've actually decreased, the cool thing is we've decreased the cost of doing medical research by over 100 times. So what that actually means is that now small labs, so like it's not just Harvard that can do medical research, it's now NTNU, it's now all these small labs, so like undergraduate students, before instead of having to pay $20,000 that they can't afford to just try medical research, now it's essentially free for them. So now we allow all these kinds of young people and the people in areas that just can't afford all this crazy money to actually become medical researchers and actually practice. So anyways, that's a bit about what we've done so far. Last week I was in Ethiopia. I was there for about 2 weeks, and I was at the Social Enterprise World Forum, and I was speaking obviously on our Emergency Dispatch Africa. So our goal was to make connections with all the other African countries in order to promote our system. So what's actually crazy is in sub-Saharan Africa, there's over 900 million people that don't have access to emergency services. 900 million people. So what we actually do is with our system, we're looking to partner with a lot of these different countries, rural communities, and we can launch anything from a countrywide dispatching system, so we can work with the government, or we can even do something as simple as like a rural community, very, very far, that has no money, then we just provide them the capability to run it themselves. So that's one thing that we did. This is Chris. You might see him in Taipei. And this is the African Union. That's where we were. And as well, here are some of our friends from Taiwan. So Taiwan sent a delegation to the World Forum. They sent over 44 people. 44 people to the World Forum. So these are some of the people. We have Betty Shu from the Ministry of Economic Affairs there. We have a guy from KPMG. And are most people here in the government? Yeah? Okay. All of them. Perfect. Okay. Because I have an issue here that I want to bring up. So, it's a major issue. So, Taiwan sent 44 people to the World Forum, and they paid everything. So, airfare, hotels, food, everything. We didn't get anything, and I'm okay with that.
No.
Not bitter at all. Yeah. But that's okay. But the problem is, so they sent 44 people over there, and they spent, so at these conferences, I'm sure all of you will end up going to these conferences at some point. You spend all your time at the conference, and then after that, they have these networking events at night. So they have these, parties. And the thing is if you want to make connections with foreigners and other world, it all happens at the parties. It happens 100% of the parties. No one goes to the events. The only people that go to the event are the speakers like me that have to go. And then we go to the after party, because that's where you make connection. People have beers, people have some PGO, and then start getting loose a bit. The problem is the Taiwan delegation had 44 people there. They only went to the conference, did not go to any events after that. And it was so sad. I talked to people after, they said they didn't even know they were there. it was really sad. So please, when you send people to your conference, or even if you have friends that go, tell them, go to the events and talk to people. And that's a major problem, because like, as part of the Taiwanese industry, like we fight so hard to get recognized on the world stage. So like I've been to the UN in Geneva a bunch of times. Taiwan is not allowed in the building because of the political issues. But it doesn't help to make friends if you don't go make friends with them at the other events. That's how you build the connections. That's how you build that guanxi. So, very important. Please pass on my complaints to the government. So, anyways, funny story. So yeah, we invited about 5 or 6 people from the Taiwan delegation to come to our center, show them what it's about. This was the only thing they saw outside of the hotel while they were there. Yeah, unfortunately. But very cool. They're super positive, great people, love it. So hopefully that they can pass on what they see. So this brings me to my kind of next point, which is describing what a social enterprise is. So a lot of times here in Taiwan, we go to people saying like, oh yeah, we have our for-profit businesses, we have our non-profits. They're like, whoa, you're a charity. We're not looking for a charity. And they laugh you out of the room. The amount of times I've been laughed at in Taiwan is absurd by like these business people. It's crazy. But just to set the record straight, a social enterprise is an organization whose core mission is a commitment to social impact. So the number one thing that we matter when we take on projects is saying like, what is the project that can maximize the amount of impact we can have in the world? So this differentiates from the more traditional business, which is the goal is to maximize profit for shareholders. The problem with that is often the projects that, when you make decisions for profit instead of impact, is you kind of lose one. So just to reiterate, the social enterprise can either be a for-profit or a non-profit. It can be both. The only distinction is that the main thing is that we value impact over profit. So when we take, like I said, when we take on projects, so for example, for us, we've launched the for-profit stuff, like with our hospital stuff. We've also launched non-profits. But what decides when we have a project and we say, okay, we have this cool technology that we can implement, does it make sense? At that point, we haven't decided whether it's for-profit or non-profit. We decide, okay, what makes the most sense to create the impact that we want to have? So, for example, for the PhysioQ one I had mentioned earlier, which deals with researchers and universities, we said, look, if we want to create the most impact, we need the most people kind of following this mission, kind of pushing this along. And what we found is that, especially in the US, a lot of researchers really value the idea of the nonprofits. So we said, okay, it makes the most sense for us in terms of impact to create a nonprofit that we can get all these people on board to kind of make that impact. So anyways, that's just a bit of background on what that is. And yeah, that's it for my little speech. I wanted to focus more on any questions you guys might have, or any comments, any sharing. I think that's the most important thing, since you guys are here to practice your English and not me, so yeah. Anyways, anyone have any questions or anything? Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Thanks for your sharing.
Sure, yeah.
You look more fit and handsome than the picture. Yes, so you should check the pictures.
Thank you. Sorry, I have a girlfriend, so.
Oh my god.
I do a research on the internet and find out the local competition in Ethiopia. Even in per capita, there are 3 that are limited. And then your team build up the ENS system to enable anyone with a mobile phone to locate it regardless if network outage. Yes, but my question is, in Ethiopia, why Ethiopian owns telephones?
So, this great question.
Yes.
So a lot of us think, okay, in Africa, people, they must not have phones. most people have phones. That's the way they communicate with their families. No one has computers. No one has any laptops or desktops. Everyone has mobile phones. So think about like the very, very rural areas in China. Everyone has cell phones. And it's the same thing in Africa and in Ethiopia. People don't have the new iPhone or the new Samsungs, but what they do have is the very like bottom just general smartphones, because that's how they communicate with their families. In Kenya, actually, there's something called M-Pesa, which is kind of like Alipay, but for Kenya only. So now they've transitioned completely, almost from all like real money to just digital pay, because they've realized that it's much more simple. So like a lot of people have what we call the cell phone proliferation is very deep actually. So it's much higher than we think it is. And then what we did is, as well with our system, is we found a way when they shut off the 3G that we can still manage to collect GPS information through we kind of like go through a backdoor in the network in order to kind of get their location information. So a lot of old smartphones, they're not very fast, they're not very good, but a lot of them still have GPS units inside. So a lot of times what they do is, because they're like, oh, this is the cheap phone, we just shut off the GPS. Even though it's in there, they'll just like shut it off because I didn't pay for it. But it's actually in there, so that's how we get a lot of our information. Yeah, so everyone in Africa has a phone. A lot of people have the old school brick phones, like the really old ones where you do the keyboard type where you type like that. Yeah, like the Nokia phones. Yeah. I don't think Nokia wants that brand to be known as that. But yeah, exactly. Everyone has those phones, and then I'd say over 50% have smartphones, like very, very poor smartphones, but they actually still work. Yeah. Yes.
Ethiopia's government supports your team?
Oh, that's a very good question. No. So actually, what's funny working with government in Africa, as you can imagine, is make sure you don't record this part. But no, so in Ethiopia, we've been working with them for 4 years. So about 2 years ago, there was a coup, which means like a change in government completely. There was an uprising. And everyone we knew, so for 2 years we built up, we got to the ministers, everything, we had all these deals lined up, okay, in 6 months we'll start putting this system for the entire city. And then suddenly there was a coup, change in government, everyone we knew, we never heard from again. We don't know where they are, we haven't heard from them, God knows where they are. So we had to start from again, from the bottom. So then it took us another 2 years to now finally get up to part where we're now talking back to the ministers again. So it's very, very hard to work with the governments there. And I was just talking with a couple ministers when I was there last time, or just 2 weeks ago. And what's interesting is when you try to work with the government, so for us, we said, okay, we will give you this technology, all our systems for free, and we will come in and train all your people. All you have to do is just show up. And that's still not enough. Because for them, they're not incentivized to do so. So what we have to now come is saying, okay, we will come with the technology, with all the training, and we have to bring in all this money so that you can feel like you can do it now. And yeah, unfortunately, that's just the way things get done in Africa. So there's still a lot of corruption. But at some point, we're kind of, because we've never given like any bribes to anyone, which is why it took us so long to start the hospital, because obviously you don't want to go that route. But what's interesting is it's very, very hard to do anything if you don't kind of pay people off. It's like China like 15 years ago, which is like, we all know that's the way things are done there. Let's be honest. So yeah, it's still like that. It's very sad, but unfortunately, it's just kind of the way you have to go. So yeah, we try not to do it, but I don't know. I can't speak like in the future. Maybe at some point we'll be like, you know what? Maybe it's worth paying someone $10,000 just so we can get this going, because like a lot of people are dying and nothing's getting done. So an interesting ethical question to bring up next time in your discussion. Anyways, yes. Yeah, great question. Yeah, sorry, you had a question?
I would like to know what support you to do business.
Why I wanted to start?
Yeah,
Or-
because in my mind, business is business, but you make a dream come true.
Yeah.
I want to know what things to support you to do that.
Great point. So that's actually a very, very common concept of saying like, oh, business, it's war. It's like we have to win. It's us versus them, and it doesn't matter what we do. It's like the money. It's all about the money. The problem with that is that what we found is saying there is still lots of money. If you go out and find real problems for people, so instead of like, I don't know, picking this chord here, there's thousands of other chords like this, and one company decided to make them as well because it thought, okay, we can make these small margins. We're not interested in doing that. What we say is, look, we look around in our society, and there's so many problems. If you solve one of those problems, people value that and will pay for it. So I don't think this idea of saying like business is separate from social good I don't think is a valid point anymore. And that's one thing we're trying really hard to prove in Taiwan, because there's the very traditional mindset here, especially with a lot of the, I guess, like factory style of like that's the industry that was built here. A lot of like cutting costs and mass scale rather than, I guess, what we call like quality goods, quality services, and kind of going for these specific centers where you can actually create change. Because the reality is, like I said, it's like if you solve a problem for society, people will pay you for it. Like, there's no question about that. Because people, whether it's the government, there's always ways to find a way. Yes, it's much harder, I will definitely admit that, but it's much more worthwhile. Because one thing that we found, and I mean just being in Ethiopia, like, we are not the first people who tried building an EMS service. There's been multiple organizations who have tried doing it with millions of dollars. Gates Foundation tried doing it, the UN tried doing it. It was actually one of the German governments tried implementing a system there like 10 years ago, and they spent like millions, like upwards of like 40 million US every time. They all failed. The amount of money we spent to create the system was 2 people and $10,000. That's it. That's it. That's all it creates to create change. It's about just putting the people in the right setting, and if you have the kind of the push, the inner motivation to solve problems, then you will get there. And that's one thing, and unfortunately, especially in business, is we incentivize people not to think long term. So whenever you go, for example, we worked a lot with Huawei, and a lot of times it was very hard working with them because you work with these managers who are just saying, oh, well, I don't want to like think about the future. My bonus is coming in 6 months. So I just want to sell as many units now, and then in 6 months I'll get my bonus. Instead of thinking, being like, okay, what is the future? What in 5 years will create the most value for myself, for the company, for society? And it's a lot of, unfortunately, I think this like short-term thinking that just ruins business. So for us, we always, when it comes to impact, we say like, okay, 5 years, 10 years from now, how many lives can we change with whatever technology or system we bring in? Yeah, sorry, that was a really long question. Answer. Sorry. Yeah. Anyways, any other? Yes.
I want to know, the reason why you founded in Taiwan, but if your company does maybe to move to your company to another country, because both of you are not Taiwanese.
Yeah, great question. My girlfriend asks me this all the time. She's Canadian. Tina, you're not allowed to say anything. So she obviously wants to go back home. But no, so I think for us, our headquarters will always be in Taiwan. We've built up a really good team and culture here inside our organization. I think it's a really good place as well inside Asia Pacific, and we can go into Asia, we can go into North America, and honestly, I don't think location matters a lot of times for these kinds of services. So one issue that we've had dealing a lot with Taiwan, and so we deal a lot with the like TTA, Taiwan Tech Arena, a lot of these incubators and accelerators, government supported. And what we found is a lot of when we work with these entrepreneurs is everything is very local focused. There's a lot of problems that are just not inside Taiwan, that are just out there that need to be solved. And I think if we want to raise Taiwan and bring it to an international level and raise the status of Taiwan, we need to start solving problems, not just in Taiwan, but we need to start exporting, solving solutions outside of Taiwan directly. That's how we bring in foreign income. That's how we raise the level of Taiwan. Sorry, not related to your question at all, but no, I think it's very important for us, and especially like when you go back to all your departments, we need to focus not just on solutions locally, but we need to expand our minds so that it includes like sending out people to these trips outside and not staying in your hotel and going outside and talking to people to understand more about what problems we can solve. Because what I found is the engineers and the designer level here, which is what I deal with in Taiwan, is exactly at the same level that at the U.S. So there's no point for us to just go to the U.S. I don't see the issue when we can get top level talent here, and we can actually, and people here, especially the young people. So at our company, the oldest person is probably 35. It just happens to be like that. But we deal a lot. So one of our organizations we deal with is called Design for Taiwan. They're supported by the EPOP Foundation here in Taiwan, and we deal with young university students. And everyone in those things are super motivated to create change and solve solutions. So what we do with them is we help them help them to think outside and apply their solutions. That yes, they can solve problems here in Taiwan, but you can solve problems like a lot of the same problems we have here are everywhere in the world. So if we apply that mentality and say, look, we can export our solutions and our technologies to other countries in the world, then we can bring in that foreign income, we can raise the level inside Taiwan, and that's how I think we can kind of change things here in Taiwan and kind of raise that level back to where it used to be. But yes, I will be here for a long time. But we have offices also in Boston, and then we have a team in Ethiopia. So our headquarters is here, and then we have all these different groups going around. So it's cool. Yeah. It's a good place. Yes.
Hi, I'm Rita, and the cleanness of drinking water has a lot of different health. If your drinking water is not clean, you will very get sick. And my question is, will the company have in the future they have any plans to cooperate with other institutions of charity to improve the problem of drinking water?
Yeah. Major issue. You've done your research. So I actually got sick from drinking water 2 weeks ago. I was telling Tina, I was like, oh my god, I'm aging this well because I'm just so sick. So I actually got to use my hospital for the first time when I was in Ethiopia like 2 weeks ago because I got sick from actually drinking water. So it's a major issue. For us, if we can, we're always open to doing anything for that. I don't think we have any specialties per se when it comes to drinking water itself, but the application through which we can maybe provide mass scale kind of knowledge about it, or any kinds of, if we can use our skill set to help, then for sure that's what we plan to do. So one thing that we actually did when we talk about communicable diseases in Africa, one of our projects was back in 2015, HTC launched what's called the XPRIZE tricorder. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it, but it's a worldwide competition called XPRIZE, and there was a $10 million prizes to create this box that was under 5 pounds that could solve, that could diagnose over 10 random issues. So different kinds of cancer, diarrhea issues, everything. And HTC had partnered with our lab at Harvard. Chris, my partner, was actually working on that box. And then we came at that point, we were finalists, so we were in the last two for creating kind of this box that could diagnose and pretty much all the major communicable diseases. And that's something we see in the future using that. So if you think about you have this small box. So I was talking about earlier about the issue in a lot of African regions when it comes to the knowledge of doctors. So you can imagine if you have this box, this technology that you can just drop in one center in one really remote area where you don't have any kind of knowledgeable doctors,
then essentially you can just connect to this box and you could screen them for all these kinds of diseases. So what we see is the use of like technology and these kinds of like innovations that we can actually disperse throughout different regions and inside Africa. And then that's something that I think we could definitely do because that's our skill set. But yeah, drinking water is a major issue as well.
Yeah, I don't know how we're doing for time, Tina.
Guys, you guys,